Hi, welcome to episode 526 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Blue Sky. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, which is where this episode and every episode show notes will be. And I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea where I sell my handspun yarns and knitting patterns. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, June 16th. I can hardly believe we are halfway through June. Everything is everywhere, and I am working on lots of things. Today's podcast will probably be a little short. I have some life chitty-chatty on what I have been up to, but unfortunately, because I have been out and doing so many things, I do not have as much crafting as I wish I did to show you. But this week, my husband is going to be out of town, and so I am hoping to get lots and lots and lots of crafting done and maybe knock a few projects off my list and have lots to show you by next Monday. So let's dig in. Today, I am drinking organic coconut tea from Tea Time at Scottsdale. It is a lovely tea shop in Arizona. I have some friends down there, and I hit it up anytime I am in town. And this is organic coconut. It is organic black tea with coconut. And then it also has what look like almond bits in it. And so it is just really, really lovely. I am drinking it in my Jenny the Potter mug, which is blue crabs. I got it when I went to Maryland Sheep and Wool, which was super fun. It was many years ago. Roxy was just a baby. I had a layover in Chicago on the way home, and my sister brought her to see me. She was about 6 months old. So it was a long time ago, but it was lovely, and this smells delicious and will keep me going through the afternoon. So I'm very glad for that. It is toasty here today, not in the house, but outside. It's going to be in the 80s and 90s. Summer has arrived, which I suppose is appropriate because the solstice is this weekend. It has gotten progressively more hot and humid here in the Midwest. We had a pretty good run up until this past week, but it was crazy hot this weekend, and it is hot outside, and I am now inside in the air conditioning for the foreseeable future. So part of the reason my week was so crazy, I talked about the last time, is that on last Monday, I went up to Missouri Star for a 2-day event. On Monday, we set up, and I left the house at about 7 in the morning, and I got to the hotel about 9 o'clock at night. Now, they did feed me, but it was a day full of setting up sewing machines and moving flats of water and getting everything ready to go, meeting the teachers. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday, we held Missouri Star Academy, which was a super fun kind of summer camp for quilters. You came into town, and part of your admission ticket was you got a certain number of classes. I think it was 4 classes. And we had a variety of classes in quilting and embroidery, stitching, applique. What else was there? We did a little bit of fabric printing. There were all kinds of classes. It was basically all about learning new skills, and we had some amazing teachers come in, and I was one of the classroom mates. So I got to be up there for a couple days, and I was in the embroidery classroom. And so I met 3 embroidery or hand stitching teachers. And actually that will influence, I'll talk to you a little bit about my projects this week. The first teacher was Sherry Whetstone, who is local to Kansas City, and she taught classes in Kawandi, which is a specific type of quilting. It is Afro-Indian. The history on it is that it is a type of quilting that occurs in a very small area of India, but it was started by African slaves who were brought to India by the Portuguese. And so they had certain methods that they had for hand stitching quilts, and then they took on sort of a new style when they ended up in India, because the scraps of fabrics that were available to them were sari silk and other kinds of fabrics that they had not previously used when they were in Africa. So it's a really interesting technique, and I started a sample, but I didn't participate in class. I watched in the class and was a classroom assistant and sort of helped out with supplies. She also taught a decorative embroidery and beading class, specifically for vintage Victorian crazy quilts, which are kind of amazing. Crazy quilts are sort of what they sound like. They are bits and bobs of fabric that you have leftovers from a variety of things, and you stitch them together sort of all higgly-piggly in any way. Some people make them as blocks, and there are templates so that you can create crazy quilts if you'd like to from home. But traditionally, they were just little bits and bobs of leftover things. And then the Victorians made them very ornate, as they were wont to do, and added decorative embroidery stitches, beading, lace, trim, all kinds of things. And so they ended up with these crazy-looking quilts. They're really cool looking. Anyway, so she was teaching some decorative embroidery stitches and beading for that. The second teacher that I worked with was Julie Kirchner, and she is she's actually an art teacher in the Kansas City, Kansas School District, and she came in and taught 2 classes. One was about sort of planning out and making your own embroidery stories. For instance, if you want to create kind of a tableau in embroidery and you wanted to tell a story, she talked about sort of how to think through that and then how to get started with your embroidery. And then the second part that she did that was really cool was she did a fabric printing class. And it's funny because we had a teacher, unfortunately, unable to make it to Missouri Star Academy, and so we had to shuffle students into different classes. And originally, the fabric printing class was not very full, but when people got to select a replacement class, a lot of people ended up in these classes. So these classes were super full. They were 30+ students, and the assignment was you learned how to draw something, and then you carved a rubber eraser as your stamp, and then you could use that with an archival ink stamp pad to stamp on fabric and create your own stamps. And this may not sound, it was super interesting as a concept, and it may not sound super easy to do in terms of, I mean, the actual like creation and carving is not hard. It may not sound easy to do in terms of like fabric printing, but to think about it in another mindset, what if you got a bigger eraser and you did a quilt label? And so I did not get a chance to carve in class. We had so many people and so many, we ran out of supplies actually because we had so many people. I finally had to turn a few people away. But I thought about what if I illustrated something or drew something and then carved my own stamp, and I could use that to print my own quilt labels to go on the back of my quilts. And so I have a window shopping cart going over at Dick Blick, which is Blick Art Materials. They are an art supply store here in the United States. And so I have a small cart going with some carving tools and a block and some stamp pads because I haven't literally pressed buy on it yet, and I may not for another month because we're about to travel. But I was like, ooh, I want to make my own quilt labels because I never know what to do. Okay, I have watched all the tutorials about how to make a quilt label, what to put on it, whatever. But when it actually comes down to it and I want to put quilt labels on my quilt, I'm always like, I don't know what to do. That seems kind of lame. And I thought, what if I had a really cute stamp that I could just stamp onto fabric and then attach fabric to the back of the quilt? So something about made by me and maybe something about the care of it, or I don't know, just something. So I'm kind of excited thinking through the possibilities, and that's on my radar for crafts to do later this summer. The finer teacher was Corey Turner Goodhart, and she owns Miss Olive and Grace, which is a fabric store in Ohio, and she is an embroidery expert, and all of her quilts and projects have embroidered details, and she taught some basic embroidery stitches. She's got some really cute kits, and it was really fun to kind of hang out and help her. The classes were busy. I didn't actually sit down, and I know some of the stitches. The stitches were backstitch, stem stitch, and chain stitch, which I have done, but it was definitely good to pick up some tips from her and some ideas on how to do it better. And I will probably pick up my embroidery again soon. I don't think I'm going to take it with me on my travels, but so that was my 2 days in Hamilton. They were really long. We started before 9 o'clock every day, and I didn't get back to the hotel or home until after 7. So that was Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, like setup and all the classes. I got home late Wednesday night. Thursday, I felt crazy hungover, and I didn't even drink while I was gone, but I felt crazy hungover from all of that. And then this weekend, it was the Kansas City Regional Quilt Festival. And we had actually planned the Missouri Star event to coincide with it so that if people wanted to come to Kansas City for a week and do both, they could. But on Saturday morning, I was a classroom aide in a class at the guild, and actually it was very funny. It was taught by someone from Missouri Star, and I kind of signed up, and I didn't know what classroom they'd be in, but I ended up I ended up in the classroom with the Missouri Star teacher, so I already knew her. I was there as a representative for the Kansas City Modern Quilt Guild and volunteering, and so it was fun, but all I had to do for that one was just sit and watch, and then at the end I had to distribute surveys and pick them up and take them back to the desk. So that was easy, and then I spent a couple hours wandering at the quilt show, and that was really, really cool. I have never been to a quilt show, and the Kansas City Regional Quilt Festival is put on, I believe, every other year, and there are 17 guilds that are in the Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma area that put on this show here, and of course the Kansas City Modern Quilt Guild is one of them, so it was full of volunteers. There is a judged portion of the quilt show, which is you can submit your quilts to be judged, and so I had a really good time wandering through there. There were some amazing quilts. I shared a few on my Instagram account of some of the most amazing quilts that I saw. I saw everything from traditional and heavily appliqued to very modern. I saw wool and needle turned. I saw huge pieces and then very small pieces. It was amazing. So basically, I had the class from 9 to 11. And then I spent about 2 hours wandering the quilts and the market, and I was a good girl in the market. I did not buy fabric. There was lots of fabric to buy, but I have my next several quilts planned out at home, and I have plenty of fabric. You can see behind me. I mean, I will say that my fabric is really, you can see the fat quarter bundles right here, and then there's a box behind, there's like a cardboard, bin behind it that's full of fabric, and that's pretty much my only fabric stash right now, and I'm trying to keep it at that level because you can see all of the yarn and fiber, and there's another fiber bookcase over here. So I have more yarn and fiber than I need for the rest of my life. I'm definitely sable, and I'm trying not to do the same thing with fabric, although I keep falling down at buying pretty fabric. But I was really good. I did not. Because I seem to have a weakness for fat quarter bundles, which are this little stack of fabric right here, I bought 3 patterns for fat quarter bundle quilts, and then I bought some stickers, and other than that, I was good. I just wandered the market floor, and then I went and looked at all the quilts, and then I went and took myself out to lunch, and it was crazy hot. It was like 90 degrees out and really humid. I took myself to lunch, and then I came home and relaxed, and I started 2 new projects. So now, 12 minutes into the podcast, we'll talk about what I worked on this week. So the one project that I did not bring with me that I have been working on is that blanket for my niece. I think I'm going to finish it this week. I only have 4 more repeats I think that I can get out of the yarn. So up until now, I've just been knitting repeats of the pattern and keeping going. But at this point, I actually want to stop on a full repeat. I don't want to stop wherever I run out of yarn. So I think I only have, let's see, that is 24 and 8 is, I think I have about 32 rows left and then bind off. And I'm super, super excited. So I should be able to, and basically when I say 4 repeats, that's like sections of 8 rows, and I usually do 8 rows a night. So that says to me, I have 4 more nights, and then I can just weave in my ends and be done. So I'm really, really, really hoping to finish that this week so that I can show you that next week. I can weave in the ends when I get home from my travels. I can wash it and it's ready to go for fall. The second thing that I didn't bring to show you is the Halloween quilt that I showed you last week. I have done nothing on it, but my husband is going to be out of town, and so I'm hoping to basically get that all quilted and finished in this coming week. So those are the 2 projects that I am working on that I did not bring to show you and that I hope to finish. The third one that I'm really not going to show you much of, I'll show you a very little bit, is this right here is all the fiber that I have left to spin. I've spun most of it. It's attached to the wheel over here, but this is all I have left. This is probably an ounce or less, and so I'm going to finish this one this week, and then my hope is actually that I might be able to ply that and clear off my bobbins so that by the time I get back from traveling, I will be ready to start Tour de Fleece. So those are the 3 projects that are going on in the wings. The 2 projects that I focused my attention on this week are new projects, and I'm excited to show them to you. So at the beginning of the podcast, I was talking about the Kawandi class that I took with Sherry Whitstone. I explained a little bit about sort of where it originated, and the process of Kawandi is the process of hand stitching bits and bobs of fabric to a larger piece. And it is done in sort of an interesting way. You start at the outer, you decide how big you want your finished piece to be, and you cut some backing fabric. And then she used a little bit of flannel, or I think she said Ossenberg in between, which is just kind of an open weave. It gives it just a little bit of extra depth in it, a little bit of padding, but it's not full on batting. I went ahead and used batting in mine because it's what I had. And honestly, it's a little difficult to stitch, so I might not do that again next time. But so here's what I did. I had a 10-inch square of fabric that I purchased. Okay, so when this is a scrap fabric project, it is meant to be done with little bits and bobs of leftover scraps. So it's perfect for a lot of quilters who have many scraps in their stash. I do have lots of fabric and lots of scraps in my stash, but I have only done maybe half a dozen quilts. And so I wanted a little bit more variety in my scraps. And we have a store in town that deals with this. The Fabric Market is a Missouri Star Quilt Company store, and it sells ends, bits, and bobs. It sells, you can basically get your scraps by the pound. It looks a little bit like a butcher counter, and there are 5-inch squares, 10-inch squares, and 2.5-inch strips. So jelly roll strips, charm squares, and layer cake squares, and you can go in and they're all sorted by color. So you can pick within a color family, or you can pick a whole bunch. And I don't know if it's because I was an employee or because I went in like the last 10 minutes of the day and she was winding up. She basically pulled the trays out and was like, pick whatever you want. And so I picked whatever I want and I threw it on a scale exactly like at a butcher counter until it weighed what I wanted it to weigh. And then we wrapped them up. So this is a 10-inch layer cake square that I pulled from them. And then a variety of other fabrics that a few of which I had in my stash and many of which I bought from them. So the way this works is you are working round and round, almost in a maze or like a snail almost formation on your hand stitching. And you are attaching small bits of fabric to the outer edges. You are attaching these folded squares called fulas, which is I don't know whether it's the Indian word or the African word for flower, but it's kind of these corner pieces. And she told us that your pieces are not finished without fulas in the corners. So what I have done is I have started at kind of the outer edge. I can show you where I started, maybe, yeah, here. So I started up here and I started with this kind of paisley print and I started adding things in, and you can see, I started with this paisley print and I started moving over, and these are all little scraps of things that I either had in my stash or that I put together. And basically what you're doing is you are folding down the edges about 1/2 inch so that there are no raw edges. On a couple of these, I buried the raw edge under a folded edge of something else, and I'm using a few pins to hold these in place, but then what I am doing is hand stitching around the edge. Normally I saw this done with with white and black, white or black embroidery floss. I am using pearl cotton number 8 and a size 5 embroidery needle, and so I am just hand stitching around the edge, and you work everything in. You work this in the corners, and I did a few extra locking stitches there, but then I am just going round and round and round and adding more pieces of fabric in and pinning them down so that they're in place, and then I will continue to go round and round and round, and then I will fill in the center as needed as I get to that point. So I have more scraps of fabric, and then when I finish, this will just be a small piece. So this is, again, it's called Kawandi, which is Kawandi, and I will try and put a link in the show notes, both to the teacher that I learned from, and there are a couple resources on the web that talk a little bit about the art. My fabrics are clearly not traditional Kawandi fabrics because they're not sari silks, they're not, they are quilting cottons, and so that's pretty much what I'm using. You can use anything. You can use shirt fabric, you can use anything you have. This was just, I wanted to kind of make a practice piece, and it's kind of fun to do a little hand stitching and just see how it comes. I tried not to be too precious with how my colors went together or what fabrics precisely I was using. The only thing I will say is I do have a few batiks in here, and I would not necessarily recommend batiks in the future. Batiks are very tight weave cotton, and so it's harder to get the needle through, and so that one is just a little bit more challenging for me. Like I said, I did put a square of batting in And next time I would probably just put an extra square of fabric, or possibly do it without anything in there. It's just to give it a little added weight and depth, but that is what I am working on. So that is my Kawandi piece, and I do not know if this will be finished by the next time I talk to you. I hope I will work on this a little bit this week, but this is not a huge priority. This was just something I wanted to try after being the classroom assistant in all the classes. So it's kind of fun and exciting, and the fabric shifts a little bit, and it's not going to be 100% perfect, but I am very excited about it. And I just happen to have this pink floss, and I thought it would kind of blend in a little bit so that it won't stand out too much, but it's kind of fun. And clearly I need to get better at the consistency of my stitches. They do go all the way through, so you'll be able to see them on the back too. So that is the Kawandi. The second thing is I did start a new project, and partially because I just wanted to, and partially because I talked about it last week, and I wanted something new. I ended up deciding to start the sundial top, and there were a few comments from you guys, and you all suggested that was the one that I should start, and that is indeed the one that I started. And so on Saturday night, I got the shoulders done, and last night I worked through the first mosaic pattern. So this is going to take me a little bit, and that is fine. I am not going to get very far in it this week. I hope to add to it this week, but I definitely started this knowing that it was going to then get put on pause. Next week, next Monday, I will talk to you about the projects that I am taking on vacation with me, because next Monday is, I leave next Wednesday on vacation. So I will see you next Monday, and then I will be gone for a week, and then I will be back. So I will just show you the sundial top, sundial tee, is a new pattern by Wool and Pine. It is a mosaic tee, and it is basically knit in one piece, but you do knit it flat front and back. So basically you cast on for the back shoulders, you work down the back, then you pick up at the back shoulders, you knit the front shoulders, and then you knit the front, and then you just go ahead and seam down the sides and add a neckband and some sleeves. So, or just some ribbing around the sleeves. It's basically like a dolman top. There's no extra sleeves. It's just kind of very square. It is knit oversized. It is meant to be knit with 8 to 11 inches of positive ease. And so I am knitting the 45. I thought about knitting the 41, but okay, do as I say, not as I do. I did not do a gauge swatch because I knit fingering weight sweaters fairly often. I picked my needles. I picked my needles one size smaller than the needles call for in the pattern, because I usually find that that's where I end up. I did not do my gauge swatch. It is in garter stitch, but it is also mosaic, so it's kind of squishy and a little stretchy, but not like entirely. So I went ahead and started, and I forgot. So I picked 45 inches because I was afraid if I was just a little bit off on gauge, a little bit too small, which is where I was worried I would end up, that the top would not fit comfortably, because my previous size was 41, and again, they said 8 to 13 inches. I generally don't like to go that much ease. 45 technically is 7 inches, and I think that will be fine for me, and even if that ends up at 4 to 6 inches, that will be fine. So let me show you what I have so far. So as I said last week, I am doing this in 2 yarns. My main yarn is Treasure Goddess Sparkle Toes sock yarn in Copper Cove, and that is a regular sock yarn base with a little bit of stellina in it, and it's from my friend Christine at Treasure Goddess, and that is this one right here. And you can see the sparkle in it as I hold it. You can see just little bits. It's not a lot of stellina, but it's definitely a little sparkly. And then I am using a mini set from McMullen Fiber Company. And this is her, I think it was called Canyonlands. And it is a set of, I don't even remember how many minis. I think it was 12 minis, 25 grams a piece, I think. And so I have started on the first pattern. So the way this pattern works, and I'm not giving away too much, the colors melt. So basically I started with my main color, which is that Copper Cove, and then I used this light blue, which is one of the colorways, one of the mini colorways, and you use the mini as sort of the foreground color and then the first color as the background color. Now what will happen next is this will become my background color, and I will pick a new foreground color. So the colors will sort of melt all the way down, and my new foreground color is going to be this one right here. And I am going to work in So I will say a couple things. First of all, the pattern calls for minis in approximately 10 gram skeins, and these minis are 25 grams. So it means that I can use each color twice to be able to, twice on both the front and the back. So I will be doing that because I have a ton of light colors and not as many dark colors. I also will be weaving this into the top. I will not just be using it at the top and the bottom. I'll be using it throughout. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one next, and then I'll do like a softer color, and then I'll go back into this one. So basically I'm just going to alternate between light and dark colors. And this is the back. Like I said, it starts at the sleeves, and then, sorry, here we go. It starts at the back sleeves. So technically, yes, I had that right. So technically these are the back sleeves. This is the neck hole up at the top, and this is the first pattern repeat. And then, like I said, I will go down, and next one, this will be the background color, and this will be the foreground color. And then it will sort of create a top that melts. And when I'm finished with the back, I knit it as long as the pattern suggests. I do a short ribbed hem on it in this color, and then I will turn around and I will go back and pick up. And what I have is I have the provisional cast on a second needle now. That's why it looks a little awkward. I will pick up, this is the top of the shoulder right here. So I will pick it up and I will do the short row section to do the front shoulder, and then we will move right down the front. And of course the neck will be a little different on the front, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't want to give away too much in the pattern. But basically, I'm just repeating the same chart over and over and over, and it's going to be a nice lightweight tee in a lot of colors. The thing that this one is great for is if you have lots and lots of scraps in your stash, you should totally use those. I thought about doing that at first, but then I realized that I had this gorgeous set that I had bought ages ago, and I was like, I want to turn it into something. And so I decided I wanted to make it this top. I won't completely finish it, but I will use quite a bit of it. Like I said, there are more lights than darks, and so I'm going to have to work around that a little bit, but I'm still very excited to be using it in a beautiful project that I will wear. So my plan is to work on this project this week, hopefully add a few more sections onto here, and then I'm actually going to take something a little bit simpler on vacation with me, and I will show you that one next week. But this is the project that, this is my carrot project right now, if we're talking about all the things I want to finish as the stick, sort of the, if I'm finishing all of the other projects that I've started to work on, to clear things off and get the decks ready, this is kind of the reward in the evenings that I will give myself. I also have some chicken bits to knit. I do not have photos yet of my chicken. That got pushed to the side because they had a few other things to do. So hopefully I will have that soon too. So that is all the news that's fit to print from where I am. My hope is that this week will be very productive and I will have lots to show you. And then I will take a brief break, and I am bringing 2 pairs of socks and a tee with me on vacation. I do not think I will get to knit all of them, but I am trying to bring so my primary, I have 2 motives. One is do not run out of yarn while on vacation, and we'll be gone for 12 days with lots of plane trips and waiting in airports. And some bus time as well. But then my other motive is not to take anything that's super heavy or requires a lot of concentration. So I have a fairly simple tee pattern that just has some lace up at the top. I figure I'll probably knock that out on day 1 on the plane, and then I can work on the top on the first couple of days with the plane and whatnot. And then I'll be able to work on the rest of the top the rest of the vacation. And then I was only going to take 1 pair of socks, but I decided to add a second skein. So that is 4 skeins of fingering weight and just under a pound, and that is all I'm taking with me because, like I said, I want enough yarn to knit, so that I don't run out, but I don't actually want any extra weight because on our first vacation, we're going on 2 vacations this summer. On our first vacation, we are taking all of our luggage ourselves, and I have a big oversized camping backpack that I have to carry myself, and so anything that I cannot take with me, I am leaving behind. So traveling as light as possible, and so again, just taking a couple skeins of fingering weight with me on my journeys. So I'm going to call it here. Next week, I will talk to you about what I've finished. I'll talk to you about what I'm taking on my trip. And the other thing is I pulled a bin aside and I pulled out a whole bunch of bumps of fiber. Some of them I will likely spin on the tour. Some of them will be prizes because remember the Tour de Fleece is coming up. I will not be here for the first 2 days of the tour. Technically, I come home on the second day. The tour starts on July 5th and I will be coming home the night of July 6th. So I will talk about it before I leave next week, but then you'll be starting on your own and I will join you as soon as I get back. And really, technically speaking, that will be the 7th of July. But like I said, I pulled a bunch of bumps aside, things I want to spin and things I want to give away. So I hope that you are doing well. I hope you have a lovely week. I hope you are not dying of heat wherever you are, that your air conditioning is working and in good condition. And I will talk to you next week. I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.